Picture this. It's 1993, and a single Supreme Court case in India is about to trigger a seismic shift in power. It led to the birth of something called the Collegium System, where judges basically appoint other judges, taking a huge amount of that power away from the government. Today, we're going to unpack how this incredibly unique system came to be and what it all means for the balance of power. It really all boils down to this one fundamental question. Who gets to pick a country's most powerful judges? Should it be the elected government, or should the judiciary handle it themselves? In India, this wasn't just some academic debate. It became the central battleground in a legal showdown that would literally redefine the country's power structure. So, how did we even get here? Well, for decades, the way judges were appointed in India was a real source of tension. The Constitution kinda gave a role to both the government and the judiciary, but it was always a bit of a gray area. Who really had the final say? This ambiguity turned into a constitutional puzzle that the Supreme Court itself finally decided it had to solve. And by 1993, that tension between the government and the judiciary had become impossible to ignore. So, the Supreme Court stepped in to take a fresh look at the parts of the Constitution that governed this whole process. This wasn't just about clearing up a rule. It was a full-on confrontation over who would control the future of the judiciary. And that leads us right to the landmark 1993 case itself. This was the moment, the one that would draw a line in the sand and create an entirely new way of doing things. Everything was about to change. To tackle an issue this big, the Supreme Court put together a 9-judge bench. Now, in the Indian legal system, you have to understand benches this large are reserved for cases of massive constitutional importance. This was the court signaling to everyone that this decision was going to be definitive. It was going to be monumental. Okay, so the official name is a bit of a mouthful: Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus the Union of India. But most people just call it the second judge's case. Why second? Well, because it directly re-examined and ended up completely overturning a previous ruling from 1981, setting the stage for a dramatic power shift. So, what was the result of this 9-judge showdown? The court didn't just hand down a simple ruling. Nope. They actually engineered an entirely new system for appointing judges. Let's take a look at what they came up with: the Collegium System. They called it the Collegium System, and to put it simply, it's a committee of judges, and their job is to appoint and transfer other judges. The whole idea was to create a kind of firewall, to insulate the judiciary from political or executive influence by letting them handle their own selections. So how did it work, at least at the beginning? Back in 1993, the Collegium was a small but very powerful group. You had the Chief Justice of India, plus the 2 most senior judges of the Supreme Court. That trio was now in charge of proposing who should become a judge. But the structure, the who's on the committee part, was only half the story. The real power in this ruling came from a brand new principle it established, one that would completely change the power dynamic between the judiciary and the government. And this quote from the judgment, this is the heart of it all. The court ruled that the Chief Justice's opinion, which was formed with the other Collegium members, would not only have primacy, but would be determinative. What does that mean in plain English? It means their recommendation was no longer just a suggestion to the government, it was now the final word. So just like that, a whole new system was born. But what was the real-world impact of this ruling? Well, its legacy has been absolutely profound, and it continues to shape the Indian judiciary even today. This slide really captures the whole before and after picture, doesn't it? Before 1993, appointing a judge involved a consultation, a sort of back and forth between the judiciary and the government. But after this ruling, it became a judiciary-led process. That one word, primacy, meant the recommendation was now basically binding. So to sum it all up, this single case established the principle of judicial primacy. It cemented the judiciary's control over its own appointments, and it created this system of self-governance that you really don't see anywhere else in the world. And that leaves us with one final and really critical question to think about. The Collegium System was born out of a desire for judicial independence, but it also raises this fundamental issue of checks and balances. I mean, when judges appoint judges, how is that power truly balanced in a democracy? That right there is the enduring legacy of this landmark case.